Bay News Ballot. We explore political concerns of members of different age groups and how social media has shaped the presidential campaign.
We take a close look at how the hateful speech by candidates impact the community.
We touch on the topic of gun control. Should students 21 and over be allowed to carry their concealed weapons on campus?
And we analyze why the majority of Americans consider economy as the top issue that needs to be further addressed in this year's election.
Hello and welcome to Bay News Ballot. I'm Nadine Zayor.
And I'm Cindy Dueñas. Thank you for joining us today. Being so close to the general election, many Americans have several questions and concerns regarding the running candidates and the important issues they decide to cover. In this edition, we bring you full coverage on what you need to know to make an informed decision at the polls.
It's no surprise that different age groups have different political concerns. And with the rise of social media, these priorities are taking an interesting turn. How does digital interaction play a role in your political life? How dependent have presidential campaigns become on social media? We go to Christopher Salas with more on the story.
What political issues are getting you going this pre-election period?
Student loans up, education, and the economy.
Nothing with racism.
It's school, college, because currently I'm a student.
Women's issues, social issues, and economic issues.
The anti-establishment versus the establishment rhetoric that's going on now.
People who should be displaying intelligence, a campaign is all about disparaging remarks, and it's all about bad things.
Part of what makes America so special is the diversity. So when you try to diminish diversity, you're kind of doing a disservice to the country.
It's like, I can't even tell you what most of their policies are because all they're talking about is bashing someone else.
But are the issues you care about being affected by how you get your information? Whether it's Ted Cruz on Periscope, Marco Rubio on Snapchat, Donald Trump on Twitter, or Bernie Sanders being dubbed the king of social media has become the biggest political campaign influence that any of us have ever seen. 38% of those that use social networking sites use a social networking site to like or promote material relating to politics or social issues that others have posted and that they themselves care about. To add to that, if you are part of the largest voting and age demographic in the country, you're probably using social media to follow one of these presidential candidates. Over 60% of millennials receive political news from just Facebook.
And with that, social media is influencing our everyday lives, whether it's work or school, even our leisure activity. But how much is it impacting our political process? How much does it impact the issues we care about? How much does it impact you?
Like if you were gonna vote for Trump, the videos aren't gonna help you not vote for him.
It allows people who otherwise be playing Mario Bros like some years ago or Xbox being focused and being exacerbated.
They kind of support what you would think. You know, they're made to get you to agree with them if you agree with them.
This stands in stark contrast to internet-using baby boomers, for whom local TV tops the list of sources for political news at nearly the same reach as 60%. So what do boomers think about social media and its impact on their political lives?
No, I don't really feel that I would need to get in social media. That's more personal to me.
To make sense of social media and politics, we stopped by political polling expert and political science professor Fernanda Monti's class to weigh in on the discussion.
Social media has helped give access to information in a way that no other generation in history has had before. Social media makes information happen almost in real time. You get to see the different perspectives. You get to truly see what different points of view are all about. Whereas older generations, even the boomers, and certainly the silent generation, were never exposed to this mass quantity of information from all angles and all sides. And I think by definition, younger voters and younger millennials have always been accustomed to getting various points of view in mass as opposed to one point of view or the other. So I think that's helped contribute to their diversity of thought.
So because the voter is now armed with more information than he's ever had, it's that much more important to go out and vote. For Bay News, I'm Christopher Salas.
Thank you, Chris. Many Americans are concerned for the future as they feel unsure on which presidential candidate to vote for. According to experts, what has made this election so unpredictable compared to previous years is the candidate's form of campaigning. The public has called out the candidates for being racist to untrustworthy and contradicting, which really has gotten the voters to question.
Some of the basic rules of campaigning that we used to assume were absolutely true have been broken in this campaign. In the primaries, you know, they're running so far to the extremes that they can say things that are absolutely irresponsible.
I don't agree with a lot of the candidates that's running, either party, Democrat or Republican. To be honest with you, I don't know who I'd vote for this year yet. I'd still be undecided.
Even though I can't vote, I'm concerned about who's going to be the next president because I live here in this country.
According to a Pew Research study, far more voters said that each candidate would make for a terrible president than a great one. At the end, the only way to ensure that the country stays towards the right direction is for Americans to research the candidates and vote for who they consider the best.
If you don't vote, it's an endorsement, because whoever, then active minorities can win. You know, you need to get your colleagues out there to register and to vote.
It is time for a break, but when we return, what is the impact of candidates who have exercised hateful speech towards minorities?
We challenge campaign promises of a better economy, and we talk with one of our experts about one of the most discussed topics of this presidential race, immigration. We'll be right back.
Let's be lovers, we'll marry our fortunes together. I've got some real estate here in my bag. Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, they've all come to look for America. All come to look for
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to Bay News Ballot. The United States is said to be a country built by immigrants. More and more arrive each year in hopes of fulfilling their American dream. Just in 2014, over 42 million, or 13% of the U.S. population, was composed of immigrants. Approximately 20 million of them were naturalized as U.S. citizens. Yet, 11.3 million remain as illegal immigrants. However, the question at hand is, will our current presidential candidate follow through with a strong immigration reform that will benefit the whole nation? Donald Trump remained steadfast on his proposition to build a wall to protect the U.S. borders and has Ted Cruz's full support. On the other hand, Hillary Clinton believes our priority is to respect local communities while trying our best to keep the border secure. We interviewed members of the South Florida area about the United States immigration policies and their opinions on the candidates' reform plans.
Now it's a big problem. It's very hard to create a policy that immediately resolves the situation of 11 million people. You need to, right now, I believe, is create a set of rules that gradually takes care of that problem.
Si los emigrantes en este país ayudan a desarrollar la mano de obra, lo que deben hacer es legalizarlos.
Now let's toss it over to Nadine as she has a sit-down panel discussion to further expand on this issue.
Today, we will be discussing the presidential candidates' proposals regarding immigration. We will also talk about current immigration policies. And joining me on the panel today are Dr. Michael Lenigan, a political science professor at Miami-Dade College, and Mr. Wilfredo Allen, an immigration attorney here in Miami. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just start off into the most controversial topic, of course, the Mexico Wall that Trump wants to build. So he first brought up this proposition back in June 2015, and Cruz has also backed him up, saying that the wall should be at least 700 miles long. But Clinton says that it's important to ensure that our borders remain secure while respecting local communities. So I want to know what you think about that.
Well, look, if Trump becomes president and he builds a wall, it will be great for my business because he'll be deporting people or trying to deport people, and I'll keep him here fighting in the court system, and I'll keep him fighting here till the next president comes around. So the theory of deportations and the theory of the wall are really good ways to get a certain community to vote for you. That's why he consistently gets 30% of the votes, or a little bit higher sometimes. But the truth of the matter is, he's never going to build a wall, and he's never going to deport 11 million people, simply because as lawyers, we can keep the legal system tied up with what happens now for the next 10 years. I mean, you read about the 40,000 children that came in 2 years ago. Almost all of them are still here.
Just a follow-up question for Mr. Lenigan. Sanders says that we should put a stop to the notion that the border must be secured before a legalization can happen. So why such opposing viewpoints? Is the security of the border a top priority?
Not really. In fact, there are two structures currently about 25 feet apart. One old leftover runway tracks from the Middle East, Persian Gulf One, and then the other a constructed wall by the Boeing Corporation. And so therefore, the wall issue is ridiculous.
Thank you,
Yeah, in truth, every country has a right to control the border. And as a country, we need to control our border. And although the only terrorists, if we define it as Middle Eastern terrorists, to try to attack the country came in through Canada. And they were stopped in the year 2000 with the Millennium Plot that they had. But on a daily basis, you do have certain criminal elements across the border. I mean, let's not be blinded to the fact that all the drugs that come to the United States, or the great majority of the drugs, come across the Mexican border.
Should undocumented residents be deported en masse? And if not, what should happen to them?
Essentially, undocumented residents, I like that term better than illegal aliens, because they're not from another universe, essentially have established to varying degrees credibility as possibly being good members of the community, contributing in different ways, including employment and other ways in the community. And essentially, I think mass return deportation has got to be one of the most unrepresentative of American ideals.
Deporting 11 million people is obviously unrealistic and probably very difficult to do.
It's impossible. It's unfeasible.
It's unfeasible.
You don't have the manpower. Look, right now you have close to 900,000 people who are criminal aliens, who have committed crimes in this country, serious crimes, most of them, who have final orders of deportation, but they have not been captured or deported by the Immigration Service or by the Homeland Security Service. So if you take resources that are limited to try to deport 11 million people, when you cannot deport the criminal aliens, we're talking
And
trash.
is that the focus, deporting the ones that have committed
Well,
crimes in
for the
US?
last 10 years, part of the Bush administration and part of the Obama administration has been to concentrate on priorities. And priorities has always been criminal aliens. And that's what they should be going after. And that's what they should be concentrating on doing it. But the problem is that until we don't put an effort to deal with the root cause of the immigration issue, we're never going to cure it.
So the Cuban Adjustment Act, do you believe that should be just taken out completely or reformed? What are your thoughts on that?
With immigrant roots myself, I would believe that it would be needs to be reformed, as our relationship with Cuba and the Cuban people is likewise being adjusted. Not to get into the embargo or anything, but that's what's kind of fascinating. Cubans at recent swearing-in ceremonies are generally, the ones I've been to, the last 9, are anywhere from 40 to 60%. It reminds me of 30 or 40 years ago of going to similar swearing-in ceremonies where it was the Irish that were the large number. So it's a reflection of power in the Congress and other kind of influence. And so I think an adjustment is in order rather than a reversal.
Just eliminating it completely.
Yeah.
Well, the Cuban Adjustment Act cannot be eliminated because it's tied to the Cuban Democracy Act. And for the Cuban Adjustment Act to be eliminated, the American president, the executive, has to announce to the Congress that Cuba has had free, transparent, and democratic elections. In the 1996 Reform Act of Immigration, the Cuban act was abolished, but it was conditionally abolished on the president announcing to Congress that Cuba had a democratic transitional government. So until Cuba has a transitional government that's democratic, properly elected in a transparent election, the Cuban Adjustment Act will not be eliminated.
What are your suggestions on immigration reform as a whole, and what candidate do you think has, posed the best plan so far?
To get to the point, Hillary Clinton's approach to me seems that it takes into account the different kinds of mechanisms, the interagency cooperation, and then the overall principles and values that need to be inherent in a more comprehensive approach than we have now. Bono, his idea wasn't just for everyone else, but also in his philanthropic work is doing pieces of the cultural puzzle that may contribute to that, both in Europe and the United States.
Right. And what about you, Mr. Allen?
Well, I always support an Irish singer from my favorite rock and roll group. So I believe that he has a good vision for what he does because he puts his money where his work is. But look, I think the Gang of Eight that's been so maligned by the Republican candidates had the right law, and the Senate passed it. Had it gone to the representatives, it would have also passed by a majority. So I believe that the best approach would be, number one, to look for a bipartisan approach like the Senate already passed 2 years ago, and push that law into the House of Representatives and enact that law. So if you look at that as the best way to move forward, more likely than not, Secretary Clinton has the clearest idea as to what to do. Although for the Republican Party, you have to admire what Governor Kasich has said, and he's been a staunch defender of a path to legalization, not a path to deportation. So either Ms. Clinton or Mr. Kasich would have the solution to our real problems in a real way.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on The Ballot. It was a pleasure to have you here on the show. Coming up next, guns on campus. Is it safe or is it a threat? And presidential candidates make promises of a better economy. But how realistic are these statements? We have this and more when we return from the break. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The 2016 presidential election has been full of surprises, from Hillary Clinton's hidden emails to Donald Trump's bold propositions. Beyond this, one particular behavior has been specifically scandalous: hateful speech towards minorities. Andrea San Miguel tells us how that has impacted our community.
The road to the 2016 presidential elections have caused quite a stir, especially when it comes to hateful remarks made by presidential candidates.
My name is Wilfredo Ruiz. I'm an attorney, and I'm the communications director for the Council on American Islamic Relations in Florida. The political discourse empowers some people to put up these signs. This sign was put up in St. Augustine. You see, Islam, blood Islam. We know this is freedom of speech, but is this the same hate speech that is fueling the increment of hate incidents, right? So we receive on a weekly basis hate incidents or hate crimes, basically fueled by the political hateful rhetoric.
I think it's just a state of American politics. No one's really paying attention, so in order to get the attention from people, you have to make headlines.
Donald Trump has said some very, very negative, very disgusting comments about certain groups. And in his rallies, it's very disturbing what we see coming out of these rallies. Individuals getting into fistfights, individuals being led out, and as they're being led out for whatever reason, the crowd is not only taunting them, but in some cases actually attacking.
The United States has become the minority majority. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, with an expected rise to 56% of the total population by the year 2060, which makes up a solid number in the polls. So how much of an impact are these communities facing when it comes to statements by potential leaders?
Of course, I've seen an impact. We have a candidate who openly and overtly on simply the fact that he was announcing that he was running for the presidency chose to disqualify people based on the fact that they might have been born on a country south of our border. I think they might win the nomination. They might be nominated by their party, but no person here, at least in this country, can become president without the support and the strong support of minorities.
It is unclear to determine who will represent the Democratic and Republican Party, but come November, our president will be chosen by voters, and these comments will affect them. This is Andrea San Miguel, reporting for Bay News.
Thank you, Andrea. Debates continue to boil over whether or not college campuses should allow students 21 and older with a permit to carry concealed weapons. Republican candidates state that politicians continue to chip away at our right to protect ourselves and stands firm on a stance to preserve the Second Amendment, while the Democrats believe more restrictions on guns are necessary to keep the community safe. Despite efforts by campus leaders to build safe violence prevention and crisis response strategies, colleges and universities are questioning if there is a better option to protect its students. According to a recent report, in 2015 alone, a total of 23 shootings took place on a college or university campus. We spoke to officials from Florida International University's police department to go more in depth regarding gun violence prevention and appropriate procedures.
As a university, we put so much effort in the preparedness and the mitigation so these things don't occur. So after Virginia Tech, that's something universities learn to do, and we work very hard at it. We have behavior intervention teams which do that, and it's an interdisciplinary team. Anybody that could possibly come in contact with students that could start to alert other people on the team, hey, we may have an issue, we may have something to look into.
The same report showed that as of right now, 9 states allow guns on campus by legislation and court rulings, while a total of 20 states completely prohibit guns on campus by legislation and higher education system policies. With Florida being included within the states prohibiting guns, we asked students of local universities about their positions on this issue.
I would feel unsafe because I don't know, like these people carrying guns. Yeah, they may have the permit, but you never know people's intentions, especially when has been so many cases when there's been shootings in universities.
I would feel unsafe. I wouldn't be in favor of it. I just don't think that there should be a reason why people should be carrying guns to school.
We also launched a Twitter poll asking you, our viewers, if you were for or against allowing students with a permit to carry concealed weapons on campus. Here are the results. 62% were against this, while 38% were for guns on campus. We got the chance to talk to a college student who feels quite differently than the majority of the votes casted. Let's take a look.
I'm a strong advocate of the Second Amendment, and I would feel much safer on campus if I was able to carry concealed. I recently read an article from the Department of Homeland Security, and they stated that the average response time is about 18 minutes for the police to show up, but the average mass shooting only lasts about 12 minutes. So the point that I'm trying to make is that I would much rather have a chance rather than waiting, or something happened to me while I'm waiting for the police to arrive, or something happened to whatever, this whole incident to unfold and finish before the police get there.
With such opposing views from the presidential candidates on this topic, it is unclear as to what would happen come November 8th.
The economy has historically been a top issue for America, and even though it is said to have improved after the 2008 recession, there are still many areas that need improvement. Some Americans feel that our current candidates might just set us back. The presidential candidates have proposed ways to improve the economy, from abolishing the IRS to offering more jobs to providing free college tuition and raising the minimum wage.
They need to come up with more realistic ways of being able to do this. Everybody's going to be happy with, free this, free that, take from the rich and give to the poor. but not everybody is rich and not everybody is poor.
They just needs to like find a way to fix it, and like instead of bailing out the big banks and corporations and Wall Street, like the little people, like the middle class, the working class, they have not gotten their bailout.
According to experts, in order to improve the economy, the candidates need to consider creating better jobs for the working class and find ways to minimize public debt.
So one of the major problems that we have in the labor market is creating good jobs. We haven't really done that. And that's a very hard problem. Obviously, another major economic problem that we have is our deficit financing and the size of the public debt.
This concludes today's political news segment on the 2016 presidential election.
And remember to follow us on social media for all the latest news on the presidential race to the White House. Tune in with us next Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern Time.
This has been Cindy Dueñas
and Nadine Zayor for Bay News Ballot. See you guys next time.